Okay, I'm here in Whyalla. We've been here for 2 days. It's been blowing a gale for those 2 days, and so I wrote this poem. And I just put it to music while I was watching the wind. I was watching all the kite surfers, and I realized that these people are out there, and they're really that's where freedom's going to exist outside of where the government can't come and control you, where you're there and you're just momentarily free. And I thought of other things like that and thought we're moving into a time where people are going to be stealing their freedom. So I wrote.
The wind is blowing like a call. Here I am. Why won't you fly? Here I am, like a lover in your hair. So why won't you look up and fly? Setting up his sail, then there he was, racing over the waves. The wing was trying to lift him free of the water's grip. And for a moment, well, for a moment, maybe he steals his freedom where he can, gets drunk only with his closest friends, pissing farts around like he's taking a holiday. Being a man, being a man. She walks through deeper forests where the dark is full of butterflies. As our world burns itself down, she sings along to all those songs that in her day used to rhyme. Used to rhyme. And the politicians are smiling again. They fill the new silencer souls like they've taken up shooting butterflies and cutting the streams to his kite. It's to keep you safe, he hears, as the water takes him down. Here, stay with me, for my waves have always loved the
Hey, Oost.
Michael, you know my favorite line in that was "piss and fart." I had to say.
That's true, man. That's true. Now, I'm going to bring in my guest now. So we're in South Australia. He's very powerful in South Australia. So it's this Mark Aldridge, and he's the leader of United Voices Australia. And the reason I got him on today was just having a great, interesting chat about the current state of the country. And he mentioned like it's okay to be a racist. And I thought, yeah, let's start. I didn't put that up. I put it's okay to hate, which is similar. But let's bring in this man. So here he is. G'day, Mark. Welcome to the
I
cafe.
don't look as handsome as you guys. I'm upset already. Hang on. Can you? I got to. Actually, it's good because it sort of blurs my eyes, and it's having the
It's okay.
laptop
All
in
our
front of
eyes are
me.
shut. So you look gorgeous to us.
Um, as you get older, everything looks better, doesn't it? Especially when you wake
That's
up in
right.
the morning. It's always a good start.
Yeah. I'm just letting people know we've got an important announcement to make after this show, but there's someone that really needs our help, but I'll say it after. But let's get into this, Mark. So you were with the Trump's of Patriots last, and you've been running for politics for a while.
Yeah,
What is it?
yeah.
What is it that's really fired you up? Were you into politics before you'd heard of COVID, or is it just
Uh,
since then?
Yeah, I'll give you a brief. It's not so hard. My nickname was Cinch. I'm a sort of help everybody person, good at fixing things, that sort of guy. And we were out on a bike ride, came back at a bonfire, having a few bourbons, and everybody said you can fix everything. Why don't you get into politics? Well, that was like 2000, 2001. So my wife and I ran for the Senate. Um, Very valuable learning lesson of how poorly this country's system of democracy works was all I learned from it. And
Can you give
then,
some examples, Mark, of that?
well, I started studying electoral law. So the system's two-party preferred. It's preferred by the two parties who write the legislation with deliberate structural biases to keep them in power and undermine any chance of someone else coming along. And an example would be that I was not known. I had long hair and a ponytail. I was probably very inappropriate to run for politics. Um, I ended up with all the best preferences, and that's when I found out from the media that I was black banned because there was too much chance I might get elected, right? And a couple of these young media girls came to me and told my wife and I that, and I went, really? And so I took a very strong approach to democracy, and I started studying electoral law, electoral cases, that kind of thing. Then Pauline Hanson got put in jail. I think it was about 2005 or six. I can't remember. And it was wrong. So I contacted a legal team and I said, you're not looking at this properly. I said, what happened if you don't know with Pauline's case? If I've got a few secs.
Sure.
Pauline had what they called supporters, not members. So they'd signed contracts as supporters, and she was approved by the Electoral Commission to run. And then, of course, she won, and they wanted to get rid of her. So they tried to backtrack and say that you didn't have the right amount of members, okay, and therefore the money you earned is fraudulently obtained, and you shouldn't be. And they jailed her. The problem with that system is that it says in the legislation, and they hadn't read it properly, that you either have to have X amount of members or as approved by the Electoral Commission. The fact the Electoral Commission complied her was made the loophole in the law irrelevant. The Liberal tried to chase, and Pauline got out of jail, and she didn't want to go back to the party. So the party approached me to run One Nation for a while, and so I was the leader of One Nation at that stage, which is a long time ago.
Yeah.
And look, it didn't work for me. I found, things happened. I don't want to go into it. I don't think I should bag
No,
other
it's good.
parties or whatever, but it didn't work out for me. And then over the years, a couple of times I ran, also because there's something interesting to complain about or advocate for, COVID being one of them. And then as an independent, I had a couple of runs for politics where I was in a position to win, and I'd get a knock on the door to be the police, and other untoward things happened that I thought were very politically motivated. And I benefited from it because I won in the end. But it's been a long journey, and so I was going to pack it in. Then Palmer contacted me, asked me to help. I was the national director of Australian Federation Party, so I wasn't a runner. I was just the director, and I ran that campaign with 100 people, but that was during obviously the COVID times. And after that, excuse me,
Was
after
that the
that,
time, Mark? Was that the time with all the freedom signs everywhere?
yeah, yes, that's it. I went
Yeah,
to
can you come
Canberra and
back?
spoke at
I'm
Canberra
very
and all
interested
that
in
sort
that.
of stuff.
Yeah.
And then what happened was the party after I had been director couldn't register, didn't have enough people. So the party united with another mate that I know that had come with a paper to get the numbers for the federal registration. Inadvertently, that meant I was the director and also one of the people for the AEC that was there to check everything ran right because they had registration problems and I'm good at that, so I got the party registered originally. So some of the patriots got registered and then they wanted me to run for them. I didn't like the name. I didn't like the name and I wasn't sure about farmers' involvement. And then Clive rang me, I know Clive, and he sort of said, we really like you on board, I'll do this, this and this, and I'll allow you to do this and this policy. So I went, okay, I can do some policy and get paid to do it, which is unusual, and normally spending money ourselves.
There's
And
something happening with your audio, Mark. I'm not sure what it is. You're suddenly getting cloggy or something.
oh,
Yeah, yeah.
okay,
I'm
I
trying
can
to-
turn off this mic here. Is that clear now?
Yeah, yeah. That's better. Yeah, the voice just went very strange for a sec. Yeah.
Well, I'm very strange, so it's probably just an attraction to Mel. So basically, I ran for Palmer's party, and about 2 weeks in, I realised he'd lied to me, so I quit the party halfway through the election campaign because I was just so taken back by what they were doing. The whole thing was just dreadful, and he still owes me some money. So if you're watching Clive, when I'm bored, you're going to have to pay that one day. So then I sat down with everybody and we said, well, people are starting to finally wake up to the fraudulent nature of the two-party system. Well, you can say fraudulent, you can say corrupt, you can use a lot of words there. And I said, let's start our own party here and federally and have a go. And it's been quite a good run so far. I mean, we've got a lot of candidates that we're running. The election in South Australia is going to be bizarro. It's nothing like anything we've seen before. They've changed all of the rules. The funding is now
Can I, Mark,
taxpayer.
before we go there, I'd like to come
Yeah.
back to that. But before we go
We'll
there,
go later. Yeah, it's fine. Sorry.
yeah, I was driving around Australia with the deplorables, watching the freedom signs everywhere, interviewing every candidate I could who was running for the freedom, whatever the party was called, Clive's party then. What do you think didn't work? Was it too saturated? Because there was posters everywhere. There was a ton of money thrown at this, and yet we only got one senator up, which was Babette, who I never heard of until I heard that he won. So, what do you think went wrong from your perspective, looking at it, or what
I
we
think
learned from there, basically?
I think what we all did wrong was that we tried to all unite the freedom movement. We called it, as you know.
Mm.
And I wasn't a candidate so at that stage. And we all wanted to unite, but we did that in such a way that it meant that everybody knew that 4 or 5 parties were working together. So if they had an issue with any one party, they didn't want to back the system. It's a bit like, to explain that better would be that Labor have never been elected on their own weight. They've been elected on the Greens and the AJP, for instance. Liberals have always had the Nationals and the Conservative preferences. So we needed to really run our own game. But when it came to the time to advise on preferences that show that there was some unity between us. But I think people jump onto the bandwagon thinking that we must be one party or we must all be united. And I think that watered down the vote. It didn't water it down maybe as much as you think. I think there was nearly a 40% swing against the majors, but it just didn't come together and elect people. And Palmer's money was great, but he never spent it wisely. I think that being the problem, to be totally honest, it became an us versus them. So if you were coerced into getting the jab, for instance, sake, even though you didn't really want it, you fell over the line with those that were, and then you had the people that refused, and people that didn't refuse and wish they had were probably jealous. It was a split. I think we split up the Australian people a little bit rather than united them on the common cause of freedom of choice, which is what it could have been about. So I think that's what happened. And it was a bit of a shame because we really all thought we'd do very, very well. I was running the party I was running came in way too late. We had registration problems. By the time we solved them, we were very late on the scene. And although we ran 100 candidates, we weren't funded. And the person that was going to help fund had a heart attack, and there was lots of problems that went wrong for us. But the only good thing was that a lot of good candidates come out of it. So a lot of people that really cared showed their faces, and that helps us into the future, because when we're trying to unite and work with other parties, we can do that better. So that's my opinion.
Yeah, and now you're saying that they've changed the laws in South Australia for the rules for running now. So what laws have what have they changed?
Well, generally they change the rules every year. So after every election, they have a joint standing committee. I used to get invited to those for some reason. They don't invite me along anymore. But they have a committee, and what the committee is meant to do is look at what the people wanted from the election and what went wrong and how they could make it better. But it's actually run by the two major parties. So basically, if a smaller party has some success, they look at how they can undermine that success. In South Australia, I think they've made a mistake. I'm not sure what's happening here, because so generally in an election at a state level, there's no funding. So if you invest $5,000 of your own money, which is about what a candidate can normally afford to do at the most, a small business candidate, that's not a lot of money. So if there's a few people in a party, you could pull resources of maybe 30,000 or something like that. But you can't dent the major parties with that sort of money, because the MSN or the mainstream media won't give you free airtime. It's like we don't exist unless you can come up with some sort of controversy. This time, they banned political donations. So I was told by the Electoral Commission at the beginning of the year, I'm not allowed to ask for money at all. And I said, well, how do I run a party doing that? And so we got this legislation that was handed to us that was coming in July, and none of us understood it. And I've been reading legislation for 25 years, and I read it like 6 times. I rang my accountant, I said, can you look at this? And I rang a lawyer mate that's in the party, and I said, can you understand this? And none of us got our head around it. So what ended up happening is I registered in time. So I'm what's called an approved party or an entity or something like that. So for every candidate I run in the election, I get paid $5,000 in advance if I wish to ask for it. Doesn't sound like much, but when you're running a fairly large new party, that's $100,000 in the bank. It doesn't sound like a lot of money, but it means that we can most probably ensure that most voters in the state know we exist. As to how well we do that with that sort of budget is a different story. What it opens the door to, though, is it also, if you're an existing party and you've run before, for every vote you got last time you ran, they give you $5.50. Now, I don't know if you know much about elections, but $5.50 is a lot of money, because if you, for instance, say, our party as a whole, with the numbers of people we've got running, will get maybe 100,000 votes, right? Whether that falls in the right places to elect anyone is a different story. That means that next year's advance funding for me is $550,000. I don't think they planned for that to happen. And there's lots of game playing in the background now that I'm not used to. But obviously, I'm used to working on a very tight budget. So I think I can spend that very, very effectively with a grassroots campaign using social media, a bit of radio, a bit of TV and everything else. So I feel, this may sound silly to you, but I feel comfortable that people will know I'm running and the party's running and what we stand for. And that's all I've ever wanted in life. I know it sounds ridiculous. If people don't want me, I'd rather walk away because they said, we don't like who you are and we're not going to vote for you. But usually you leave an election campaign feeling that no one knew I was running. So I don't know, you're so well hidden by the media, you never know if what you are putting forward is the reason you didn't get voted in. Whereas this time I feel confident that the public will know. Whether or not that relates to me getting an upper house seat or the possibility of lower house seats. But the thing is, this is a very different election because all of us have got some funding, right? Like, especially if you've run before, like Family First, um, Family Party, Fair Go, which was used to be One Nation. It's an interesting thing because, having worked with One Nation, generally for every three people that are elected, two of them jump ship and start some other party or go somewhere else. And so we're not sure how this will water down because obviously you and I are seeing the polling showing One Nation rising to a sort of strong level, but they really don't have any background. They've got a couple of senators and they've got an extra couple because of a double D, and I'm not sure they're ready to be a competent second in line party, but that's what they're aiming to be this year. And I think we need to stick to the old school of looking at who's running and preferencing based on some investigation. You don't see a lot of that happen in elections, but it's what I'd like to see personally.
Can we get this thing? One thing we talked about was the hate speech laws, and you are actually of the belief that we don't need them, and it's okay to be a racist. It's actually better to talk to people who hate and are racist and reach them that way. Is that am I right there, or could you expand on
Well,
that?
it's a two-fold street. When you study electoral law, you're studying inadvertently the Constitution, right? And the Constitution was set up, it's a really good document, the Constitution. It made some mistakes. It said things like until Parliament otherwise provides. And trust me, every time that was the opportunity, Parliament provided poorly for us. But the concept of representative democracy demands complete and utter freedom of speech. It can't be anything but that. Otherwise, it undermines it. And so, as a candidate in South Australia, you need to know, the electorate need to know, constitutionally it says you need to cast an informed vote, right? So you need to know who I am. And if I'm a racist pig, I need to be able to speak that racist rubbish, right? So that you know not to preference me. In fact, it should be so you know to exclude me, although that's not the case. And likewise, if I'm elected by you, my job is to do what you want. There's some inadvertent issues there that I should educate you first and everything else. But I need an open line of communication with you. If the majority of people in the electorate that vote for me want me to bring in laws to get rid of certain people that have migrated here because they feel it's unsafe for them or something like that, then that's actually my job, right? Even though I wouldn't like that, I would want checks and balances on that. So you can't operate in a representative democracy without absolute freedom of speech. You have to have it because you need to know who that person is. If I can't say all sorts of things because in fear of offending somebody, right, and it's pretty easy to offend a lefty, let's be honest here, then I'm not going to say anything. And then you're voting for me, you don't really know who you're voting for. And next minute, you've got some guy in there that's this, that, or the other. And you think to yourself, well, I didn't know that. And likewise, people say, well, no one represents us properly. That's because we have to have that dialogue. We've seen a split in the electorate with major parties because the major parties, when you're elected to a major party, quite often you've got to do what you're told. You've got to follow the party line. We're seeing that play out, with the Nationals and Liberals at the moment. And so that divorces the system of democracy straight away because they can't really represent, and when we saw Little Proud come out and go, hang on, us lot looked at this hate laws, we're not going to follow it. And then the Liberals sacked them, off their bench, off the front bench. That is indicative of what goes wrong if you can't keep that connection together.
The last thing you said, I've just got to pause a sec. You told me that in the Constitution that it protects free speech because people say
Absolutely.
There's nothing in the Constitution. So where in the Constitution have you seen that it protects
This is an argument I had with the High Court. I'll send you a copy when I find it in my computer so you can see it. Section 7, Section 31, all through the Constitution, it's about representative democracy, right? And it spells out the choosing, like in the section that says choosing of senators, right? And that you must choose senators to represent you in politics. So there's all these different sections when you combine them together that relate to the conversation And that's where privilege comes from. If you understand Parliament, Parliament has privilege, right? So they can say anything they like when they're in Parliament, right? And there's been all these court cases like Lang, Theopolis, major constitutional determinations and arguments as to what free speech is. The problem is that the only people that go to the High Court is not you and I, it's the politicians. So the protections sits, it's called Lang at the moment, it sits there and protects the free speech between the elected politicians and the electorate themselves, right? That's actually a proven law. What they don't think about, and what a lot of people don't think about, is that come election day, come the issue of the writ, we all become equal, okay? So anyone that's over 18 years old, or 18 years old and is an Australian citizen, or doesn't have to be a citizen in case of state, you know, it can be a dual citizen. Once they call an election, there's no difference between you, me, and the Prime Minister, okay? None.
Wow.
And their speech is still protected. It has to be protected because they've got to freely speak about their policy and how they feel. And that argument's been used many times. It's called Lang at the moment, which is Lange. It was Theopolis and Roberts before that. So you have to have that open dialogue. Now, we have an issue in Australia where when you run for the Senate, and I'll try to keep this really short, when you run for the Senate, I take things pretty damn seriously if I'm putting myself forward as a senator for the country. So I study the Constitution intensely. When you losing my mindset on this one. When you run for the Senate, one of your jobs is to look at any legislation that comes from the lower house, which is the government, basically, and to a degree. It comes through and we're meant to look at it. And if it was the COVID legislation and I was a senator, I would have referred it immediately to the High Court for adjudication under Section 51, right? And if it was the hate speech laws, I'd refer it as being undemocratic and against the whole feel or concept of the Constitution. We have an issue in this country that no senators have ever done that for 20 years, and that's actually their job. And I get worried about that because the referral is free. You know, if I'm a senator, I can say, I think this here, if you're going to try and pass this, either take this section out, but if you're not going to, I want the High Court to adjudicate whether it's in line with the Constitution properly. And I would refer it. And in fact, I would fight it personally, or I'd have a barrister like One Nation that got Hugh. He's really good. He's a really good barrister. And so, and he'd probably be good enough to fight a case like that. And so no one's ever fought that before. And so people keep saying that we have no rights, free speech. You have to have free speech. Otherwise, the Constitution fails. You know, if I can't talk to you freely about who I am, you can't make an informed decision about me and cast an informed ballot. And that's very, very important. And likewise, I can't represent you if I can't talk to you. So my feeling and my opinion is, at the moment, the Constitution protects free speech, but it tends to be targeted at for politicians themselves, which is called privilege. But I believe that privilege can't be just it can't be just, it's been proven in the courts, it's not just during an election, it has to be followed through between elections under Lang. But someone's got to fight for us. You know, if I was in the Senate, I'm getting too old, right? So like I run this state election, I don't know if I could do another federal. If I was elected, I would straight in there and wipe out half the written legislation by referring each piece to the High Court. And if I had to do that every day of my life, I'd do it, because this country deserves better than what it's getting. And I'm proud of the Nationals for standing against it. They were willing to throw themselves on the sword. Very good move by them, and that shows you what a decent politician should do. They stood there and they lost their seats and they lost their power within the House. Excuse me, but they did it for a good reason, and we should see more of that. And shamefully, when we look at other parties, we start going, oh, Labor on the nose, can't stand Albo, Liberals look weak to us, and we start looking for someone else. Well, you know, we can't just jump onto any bandwagon if we can't see that the experience is there or the fight's there. And I think that means there's a lot of change needed in this country.
Look, Dr. Paul here. I don't understand what problem this legislation is trying to solve. I mean, were there already laws against, inciting hatred towards groups? What, it just seems I was subject to political lawfare around COVID. And to me, I worry that this interpretation allows, it's all about the interpretation. It gives power to control speech to whoever interprets what these laws mean. And I think it's dangerous, and it's not clear to me what problem it's solved.
It doesn't solve any problems. It's the worst piece of legislation, rubbish. But the first one they ran through was just a designer nightmare. They even tried to hide gun laws in the last few pages of it. I mean, just typical Labor. And then the second section is just as bad. You can't do it. I mean, the law in this case of that act, and I've only read it briefly because I've got state matters to deal with at the moment, but you can't have legislation like that when it gets its strength from the end victim. So, I could be offended by anything. We live in a world of everybody being offended by everything. I mean, I could walk through my market and I said to someone, "Oh, you look very beautiful today," and that can be taken as a compliment, or it can be taken as some sort of untoward advance. It could be so many things now, and you can't have some lunatic that's offended by you saying something polite, referring it to the courts. I mean, they're already trying to refer some guy that was jogging along and called some people gay or something. I mean, wow.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
you
They
come
got a
back as
manhunt out for him.
I know. It's. We had a big thing with the first rally I held over here with someone with a sign that said "Free Desi Freeman" or something like that, and
Yeah.
they made it sound like it was a manhunt for him, and the police are on the TV. And I'm going, but he hasn't committed an offence. And by the time they found him,
Sorry, Mark. The picture had nothing on it. It was just Desi's photograph. That's all it was.
I can't remember. I was there, but I didn't
Okay.
see it. And
Yeah,
they
I saw
dragged
the
me.
image. Oh, well, I saw the image they posted. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
the cops dragged me in about it. I said, "Just mate, really?" Um, I said, "I didn't see it, and if I had seen it, I wouldn't have said a word about it because it wasn't offensive." And
Yeah.
there's no piece of legislation in the state. They come on so often telling you that laws are this and laws are that, and you must do this and must do that. We saw it through COVID. I
Mm.
mean, I refused. I mean, I never had the jab. I never wore a mask. I had no intention of it. I refused to do it for my businesses. I refused to do it for my market. One day in my market, they sent 22 police cars in to shut it, and I sent them packing because I was ready. But this we live in a country where they will misuse the legal system, and this piece of legislation is the worst version I've seen of it, to frighten people to shut up and take away the most fundamental rights of free speech. And we need people to battle them. But for you and I, on outside, I've been to the High Court and I've been to the Supreme Court, and I've been doing this for 20 years. The costs are staggering. You take you've got to take months off. I ran a big defamation case. I was in court for 3 months. It was the most awful thing I ever went through. And if I was elected and in a power situation where I'm being paid to do it, oh, gee, I'd love to do it. And I don't understand, therefore, why we have all these people in the Senate that say they care for us that aren't using every avenue possible to protect us. And so I think politics is very broken on that aspect alone.
Do you think, Paul, that these hate speech laws, the vagary around it, I was talking to John this morning about it, that's what's frightening people. They
Yeah,
literally don't know what it is that they will say, so the whole country is going to default to silence. I mean,
well,
since the laws have
absolutely.
come through, my bus looks like a sovereign city, looks like a flotilla in a sovereign citizen parade, and people are terrified of it. They don't come near it. They're like stand away. They stand apart from our folk, but it's really interesting. You know what I mean? And there's nothing really offensive on it, but it's just asking them to have an opinion. It's stating that something's wrong, and they're terrified. You know?
Well, it's who decides. Someone might look at that and say it's offensive. Report
That's
them
right.
to the finger men. Report them
Yeah.
to it's just it's shades of COVID. in that, if they find you, you just need. We suspect it's certain. Certain things will trip this, like our friend Damo, who had the
Yeah.
inappropriate twitch in his arm.
They was changing
And
light bulb.
yeah, it was changing a light bulb. And he, but it was a nonsense claim. But if you look at how they're framing it, it's like, oh, that makes it an extreme. They're trying to frame it, and this is why I think it's political, but it's very dangerous because to me, we didn't learn any lessons from COVID. No one has suffered consequences from the degradation of democracy and from the crimes done to the Australian population, the things that were withheld, the outright lies, and the tyranny, and without lessons learned, without consequences, this is the world we get. It just continues on. It just changed shape, and I always feel like we're in a we've been at war for 5 years. COVID was part of the war, and now we're moving on to a new phase. And I really hate that I hope that's not a hate crime to hate, that we're becoming like the UK, where you can be arrested for a meme or there's obviously a global agenda, and I think that is part of controlling the population, or preparing to control the population and their thought and their narratives going into an event which is coming, is my suspicion. One, which may be a war of some sort.
Sorry. It was interesting for me because before COVID, COVID started in early 20, generally. We know other things happened beforehand. And I went across to Indonesia and I caught up with the IPCC. So I've got a friend over there that's the lead author for the IPCC, which is the United Nations. And then we catch up with the scientists, and the scientists take the piss out of the guy that authors the final documents because he makes them political. And then they give him shit because they say, we didn't say that. The world's not going to warm. Anyway, we won't go into that. And he says to me, we're playing pool and drinking bintang in this big mansion they live in. And he says to me, I'm writing the memorandum for governments on the impending pandemic. And this is in late October 19. And of course, I've just taken the piss because I said, you can't have an impending pandemic. What do you even mean by that? And I took no notice of it because I thought he was just trying to have a go at me. But he gave me the whole story about how they tried to do it earlier with, what was it? It was some other thing, SARS or something. And then they couldn't get the governments to agree, so they were doing the memorandum first. And I went, yeah, that sounds really icky. And I came back to Australia and I got sent. I got back to Australia and there was fires on, and I do fire response and rescue. So I do it privately. So we head out and help people. So I headed over to a place called Kangaroo Island, just off the coast. And we've got no power, we've got no nothing. So at night we're staying in this villa someone gives us, but on the beach, but no power. And I go up on the hill and I'm trying to ring my wife, and he rings me and he goes, oh, it's all gone through except for 4 countries or 6 countries have all agreed. So the pandemic starts soon. And that was in,
wow,
I reckon it was late December. No, it might have been early January, like the 1st or the 2nd or 3rd of January that I was in KI. And so I went on, I spoke to my wife and told her, and I put a post up on my Facebook page. I had 80,000 followers, and I put a post up, there's an impending pandemic with a smiley face, and, and told them what I knew. And then the next day I've gone up the hill again to ring my wife, and she said, why'd you take down your Facebook and your Twitter and everything? They're all gone. Because she's monitoring for me. So I didn't take them down. That's what it took to lose everything. All of my social media was to put that post up. And then, of course, it all started, didn't it? It all started around that time. And so I took a very firm stance on it. But you know what was happening to us all. So I opened a new Facebook page. I got back 10,000 followers. I couldn't write anything. Every time I wrote something, I was blocked for 30 days and all this sort of stuff was going on.
Yeah.
And so we're heading the country to that. We're heading the country to a stage where we'll be too scared to talk about things, or we lose our Facebook, or we have a visit from police and all this sort of stuff. So
I
there
think
needs to
the
be a very
police will be the one. It's here from Simon O'Rourke. G'day, Simon. It's bleeding obvious that the speaking against vaccines in any future emergency will be deemed causing alarm and against social cohesion. They are not subtle. I agree with you, Simon. This is what they've learned from last time. They're coming in this time, and yeah, I think it's an incredibly dangerous place to be because it's like it's just 1984. It's all happening. Everyone's talking about it now. I interviewed an old nurse yesterday. She said, "Read Animal Farm. It's happening right now," and this is where we're at. And yet there's this. I can tell you the two things I noticed traveling around the country is people are silent and people are down. They're miserable. It's very rare to come across people laughing or just walking down the street and going, "G'day, mate, how you going?" They just don't. You go into stores and they just look up at you and the stores are quiet. We're in a very strange time, which is really strange that we're sitting on so much mineral wealth. We should be incredibly wealthy. And yet somehow the corporations, the government, whatever, suddenly we're basically like paupers. Paupers begging for food on a friggin' on a big dump of gold, a big load of gold. I mean, it's just nuts. And
it's it,
yeah,
it's worse now because they're running. I've been an Aboriginal activist for 20 years, so I've sat with them. I was indoctrinated as an Aboriginal man. I don't call myself that because I'm not, but they had to give me special tattoos I could show you. Um, and it's now they're putting black against white. They're putting Palestinian against the Muslims and the Palestinian against this and that. And this hatred and division in the community is nearly getting dangerous. I would suspect that if we keep seeing the media pushing Aboriginals burning the Aboriginal Australian flag, and then the Australians start burning the Aboriginal flag, and we go down that route, that is so dangerous. And funnily enough, right in the middle of everyone talking about that, I put up this beautiful picture of some young Aboriginal girls on Australia Day embracing the
yeah, I
Australian
saw that.
flag, and it had like a million hits, and it shows that we're not racist at all, but there's this deliberate push to make us hate each other. And I think that's
Mm,
the old to divide
divide
and
and
conquer.
conquer.
But
Yeah,
we have to be very cautious that that doesn't happen because I don't think that's who we are. I've been around a bit in politics. You read people, you see things, you go to rallies, all this. I've never seen genuine racism. I did see it with the NSN at one of my rallies. I did see the talk coming out of their mouths that I would consider extremely racist, but it still wasn't enough for the sort of treatment we're seeing even them getting, deport someone because they were standing somewhere with a Nazi symbol.
yeah.
Um,
And Joel is still
as
in
much as I
jail
don't
for
like
a
that,
telegram post. Yeah.
but I don't know that that's our biggest problem in this country.
Well, let's
Um,
let's
you
go
know,
to the title of the show because this is a great segue. So I called it "It's Okay to Hate" or "It's Okay to Be a Racist." So what you're talking about is, so say we got these NSM boys. In your opinion, as a politician, it's better to talk to them, to debate them, to try reach out. Because if you suppress it, then what you were saying was if you try to suppress hate, it does not go
goes on.
away. What are your thoughts?
Well, it happened with the anti-association laws. They brought in laws where they wanted to label bike clubs and everyone that knew them. I remember going to Canberra speaking about it. So if you're a biker, as they called it, or an outlaw biker, or you're an associate an outlaw biker, and they brought in these laws to stop you seeing each other. But that extended to family, personal family, kids. You couldn't go to a family outing with your kids because this sort of stuff happened, and that attack on them the same, and so they went underground. So the criminal element of whatever criminal element existed is still there, but harder to see. Before it was running around with big colours on its back, and now it's hiding in a garage somewhere, whatever the case may be. And I think that's happening. I think we're seeing that here. The NSM haven't gone away. They'll just recoup. And I was personally not too flash on some of their messaging. I'll be honest, me personally. But that's not to say they don't have a right to say those things. I was never, I
Isn't
think
that
they
free
went a bit
speech?
far, but I understood them. I just didn't
Mm.
support some of the things they said. And so you've got to have that freedom of speech. Even you have to apply it to the worst. If you don't apply it to the worst, we'll lose it. if I take the freedom of speech from you, Michael, on any topic at all, inadvertently, I'm taking it from every single person in the country, and you
Yeah.
can't stop that happening. You just can't. It's just how it works.
Mhm.
So it's okay
Mark,
to hate.
Mark, I
It's
just don't
okay to
believe you
hate.
can. I don't think you can legislate against hate, you know, and I don't think you can legislate against extremism. And I think that this is dangerous because it's almost like pre-crime. Uh, they're not. If people are actually planning and and actually inciting violence, there were already crimes against. There were already crimes, and you know we have agencies to deal with it. I'm just trying to understand in this current environment why they're doing this shit. And just like with COVID, it's happening through all the Five Eyes countries and the former Commonwealth, and uh, it, and it allows arbitrary power because they. The fact is that we don't know. Well, I can read this, you know, but no one really understands where the red lines are until they pick their patsies, their targets, and hold them up to the public and say, "See, this is the sort." And it's a great big performance, but it's corrosive because I think what you're both saying is, or what Michael said earlier is that people are doing it tough. You know, I think. Uh, Affordability. The flip side of that is that no one has money, and so we're becoming like rats in a cage, and then you can just find when you give a rat who's alone in the cage electric shocks, it'll just get depressed. But if you put two rats in the cage and give them shocks, eventually I think it's the other rat that's the cause of my suffering, and they fight until they kill each other.
Yeah,
Um,
red
and
yeah.
that's the danger, you know. It seems like this is not going to stop it. What's going to solve it is fixing our economy, bringing back real prosperity, bringing back real freedom, you know. Because without freedom, we're heading into we won't have prosperity. We're just going into some dystopian um, uh, negative state, and I don't know that the politicians are the solution. The uni party is acting on the interests of some puppet master. Anyway, what do you think?
Oh, look, I'm really worried for our country more in the last 3 years than you could ever imagine. I mean, when I ran for politics, we were worried about the GST, and we were worried about a raft of things that have slowly just got worse and worse and worse. And my target problem was the electoral system. I think if we had changed that a lot long ago, where you didn't have to vote for who you don't like, and you had better access to who the people were, we took more interest in the system, we might have had better outcomes. But I think right now what we're seeing is the politicians scared of us, and that's a really good thing. I mean, democracy always works best when the politicians fear the people. And I suspect this is a sign that they are really frightened of us, and of Albo in particular. And I think they what they're doing now is going out of their way to try and shut us up, because he's really offended that people put memes of him in a bikini. I mean,
Albikini.
he's not. Yeah,
Albikini.
yeah. I'm glad I didn't see that, because that would probably scar me. But so I think what we're seeing is the end of an era of two-party politics in this country, and they're going to
Yeah,
go down swinging. And they've got a lot of money, they've got a lot of people in the background. They have
yeah,
their people in every government department. They have their mates in the banks. They have their mates in the mining, and this is not going to go down well. But I think we're coming to the end. It's like some sort of big fight that ought to have happened a long time ago, and it's happening now. And so we have to be very cautious how we come out of that, who we choose as leaders, who we choose to represent us. And our party's got all these weird policies, like we want to see more markets where you go on and buy produce straight from the farm and get to see each other and meet each other. I think we need more of that. We need what Michael sells. Michael sells love and compassion and empathy, right? And seriously, if we don't need more of that, I don't know what it is we do need, you know. And Michael sells that well. He's always had. That's why I enjoyed watching him all these years, because he sells
Thanks,
information
brother.
with empathy, and I think we need to really seriously consider that, and we need to stop the division. We need to stop the hate ourselves, just and band together now and come into the new era. And I think we are doing that, because otherwise, why would they try and bring out that first round of hate law? It was just so bad. It was like a desperate
So a
attempt.
desperation. Yeah. Just
It
going
Yeah,
back
was
to
Mark,
a
the
desperate.
bikini for the sec, I just want to show because we had another prime minister who wore bikinis, but he didn't seem to have an issue with it. And so, I don't remember him bringing in hate laws so he couldn't be seen in a bikini. But Albanese seems to have a big trouble with it, and I don't know why. You know what I mean? He's got a good body there. He's a bit of a muffin top, but it's all right. But I do. It does appear that these hate speech laws are rammed in now out of desperation. Because he went to the tennis the other day. I've never seen an Australian prime minister booed like they booed him at the tennis. And not only did they boo him, but everyone shared it. I mean, I don't know about mainstream media, but on Twitter, Facebook, the Instagram, hating Albo is become sort of a pressure release valve for Australians.
maybe
They
that's the hate
really
speech
dislike
he'll prosecute. It's a federal law, so
everybody. We'll
maybe
transition us back into a penal colony.
no,
Then we're all in prison.
we have to learn to love the godlike leader. All hail the leader. This is that's what it's like. Mark, earlier you were talking about the minor parties. I was really disappointed because the last federal election, I actually thought there was a chance the minor parties would get their act together and would be a force. And what I saw was, and my idea behind this was that if they just had a clear set of principles, and I'm not talking fucking 10 pages, I'm talking about maybe 5 or 10 things or 5. Okay, that 10's maybe overly ambitious. You could start a new religion with that. But if they could have just agreed on 5 kick-ass principles between them, then you would have had something to unite under an alliance. And I saw ego and I saw division between them, and I didn't. And I think that's why they failed, because they weren't motivated by principle.
It's the motivation that's the problem. Let me explain this. I've tried to unite. I've tried a thing called the Alliance. I've done a lot of things. That's why we called the party United Voice Australia, hoping to bring people in. Um, Let me give you a weird explanation, right? And I don't really know the answer to this because I've been doing it for a long time. My interest is the community. I'm just a community person. So the people I've got in as people in my party aren't experienced. Some of them are, but some aren't. And they're just people that care for the community. I figure if you're going to go down fighting, you may as well, and you're not either going to lose, you may as well try and do some good. And
Yeah.
politically, I've done that for the last 20 years. I run markets. If there's a fire, I get out there. If there's a flood, I go out there. I just try and lead by example to gain my votes from that. But when you look at the parties, let's just look at the state election coming up. You've got, and I'll just explain the differences. You've got Family First, right? The two people running Family First were Labor, right? So it's quite an unusual change of tack for them. They are targeting a conservative, Christian valued vote, all right? That's who they are. That's what they'll target. Me, I'm conservative, but I probably swing more conservative left than right. And when I say that, I'm a conservative, but I'm an animal rescue. I have an animal sanctuary, so I have a lot of interest in animal welfare, and I have a lot of interest in the environment. Net zero can get stuff, but there's other things about the environment that I see as dangerous, right? So I kind of fall into an odd place as a party. You've got One Nation. They're conservative right, quite strongly right, and there's racist overtones within that party that I wouldn't have, for instance. So when you try and unite these people, it doesn't always come together properly because we have things that drive us to create parties. Heart Party with Michael, great bloke, right? But he's always had his policies. and he's a really good guy. And so we did try and do what you said. We tried to say, here's 5 things that are important. What we did was we did it publicly. So it kind of ruined it. In this one here, I'll say on the outside, we're all talking, okay? We're all talking. The one that's not talking so much is One Nation, because they feel very empowered at the moment. They expect to get a couple of seats, and so they don't really have to talk to people like us, which is sad. I don't like that. I think they're underestimating their power right now. We should all be talking. We should do our own thing and do it strongly. And out of it, the 2 strongest ones could become a coalition and change things. But you do need to look at that. We do need a coalition. I think it's too dangerous. If you had just one party in Australia, yeah, that wouldn't work. You need 2 or 3 playing around the outside to keep the rest in line. And, you know, originally we had Labor, Liberal, and they had their little cohorts, and then we had the Democrats to keep them honest, as the saying was, keep the bastards honest. I think you need that type of system.
Didn't they?
Yeah.
As,
I think you need that type of system. And as I was trying to explain to One Nation, you know, when I was talking to them, I know James really well, so I spoke to the Federals, and I know all those guys, and I spoke locally, and they were sort of concentrating on the little slight differences. And I said, well, that's how it works. I'm going to get different vote. My vote target is really some of the lefties that are not thinking straight. You know, I think we need to bring some of the votes from the Labor left and the Labor Greens, you know, those sort of left voters over into the Conservative realm, so that we can strengthen our position. So if I work with One Nation, for instance, sake, we're both going to attract slightly different votes, and if we work together, that would be a more powerful bloc in the upper house and lower houses. Everybody thinks differently. I'm just a straightforward guy. Like, I don't really have anything to hide. I'm not interested in the rubbish. I'm 60 years old. I've paid out a mortgage. What's that?
I'm just behind you, 59.
Oh, yeah? You look so much younger and handsomer. I think it's just, I haven't got the grey hair yet. Yeah, you know.
Hey, Mark,
can I ask you, Mark?
How about free speech? How about free speech as a uniting principle behind the parties? Because I can't see why any of them, that mob that are currently sitting in Parliament, voted for this. I mean, if they had one of their guiding principles as supporting freedom and free speech, obviously there are times where there are elements which any reasonable person would go, that guy's a nutter. He wants to start a war. This person has gone beyond the pale. But this is, we should, if it's not in our constitution, maybe we should be looking at our constitution and enshrining freedoms and like we have in the international charters, which includes freedom of speech and expression. We had all sorts of human rights laws. None of it made a shit of difference during COVID. So I would put to you that the real thing that should unite, if we have any decent politicians out there, is true freedom of speech, which is common sense, and not subject to political or other vagaries to be manipulated. And you know what I'm saying? I'd like to see. I'm so disheartened that I think we should really look at why our institutions failed during COVID, and sit down back to the drawing book and say free speech is non-negotiable. You know, bodily autonomy is non-negotiable.
The Bill of Rights, I've authored one 10 years ago. Mine's not exactly how it probably should be. Everyone liked it. We held rallies all over the country about a Bill of Rights. The people should get to vote at an election to alter the constitution, to add a Bill of Rights to the schedule. You do that, a retrospective Bill of Rights, all your problems are gone.
Well, maybe not, because
who offers it? It's a different story.
Because the countries that had a Bill of Rights also had their human rights trashed during COVID. You know, was it Canada, New Zealand? It didn't protect them. So this is why I'm saying there's something fundamentally flawed, even within this process, that we have to look at and say, no, guys, we need proper free speech. We need proper human rights, and we need to understand why things fell down in the last 5 years, and we want those principles on which the country was based, or at least what most people think the country was based on. We want them back.
Well, see, the Bill of Rights, the problem you have is that states have bills of rights. So that Victoria's got a Bill of Rights, but it's a legislative Bill of Rights. They can change it tomorrow if they want to. That's why you've got to have a Bill of Rights, a bit like the original charter, but you attach it to the Constitution under the schedule. Therefore, it becomes applicable to all law in the country and can't be overridden. And it's got to be, it doesn't have to be very strong. When I wrote mine, I wrote most of mine came from what country? The last country you think of. South Africa. Their Bill of Rights was actually very impressively good, and so I stole most of the information from there and added in, and we added in
But
autonomy.
I can add to that though, because when I was first starting Cafe Lockdown, I was getting calls from South Africa, and I remember one guy said they were doing a anti-lockdown march or anti-jab march, and they were attacked by the same bearcats that we were attacked at the shrine, and they said they were in shock and they were brutal, and it didn't make the news. It just made to us, and we tried to get in contact with the guy, we couldn't. So even there, there something happened in COVID. I know I saw a thing on Instagram the other day, so it's probably not true, but they're saying there's a thing coming out in England now that the system was working together. The police were not allowed to take any COVID complaints. If you called up with nothing, and then that went through the judiciary, they wouldn't do anything about it right the way out, and the whole system was working together to suppress anything bad about COVID and especially the jabs. And
Absolutely.
and what happened was they said, no, there's no such thing. We're not working together. But now Freedom of Information has come out and proved that they did. But even though it's proven that they did, they've proven that the lie was that draconian. There's still no outrage. And here's our main problem. And we have it the same in Australia. I look at these people and they're broken. They're like what you say, Paul, that thing about the rats in the cage fighting each other. The other one is you've got a dog in a cage, you electrify it and you keep electrifying it. And then eventually when you open the cage, the dog doesn't leave. It just sits there getting electrified because it's lost its will. And to me, all these things that are coming out, we've got all these excess deaths. I interviewed a nurse yesterday, 39 years old. She said kids never died of heart attacks, hardly ever. You could concur with that, Paul. Look at me sounding like a doctor. Do you concur?
I do.
So so these are absolute truths, and yet there's just this nothing. I actually feel like when you watch Schindler's List, and the Jews are in the death camp, and some of them have been shot, and the others just keep their head down and keep walking. You don't look at the dead. You don't look at the person, the Nazi shooting it. You just keep walking. I actually feel that for a lot of people, not everyone, but for a lot of people, that's what they're doing now. Their attitude is just look down, keep walking, don't notice the excess deaths. And I saw this especially when I was talking to a funeral director in this tiny little town, that she'd been there, the town, they'd had 50 years of the town, this family had been doing the funeral directing. They'd never had so many deaths in the last 2 years when I interviewed her or talked to her. Never. She said it was unprecedented. And when I said, did any of the mourners ever come up and go, what's causing it? Is it the jab? She goes, nothing. They sit there silent, they have their weep, and they just go back as though nothing's happened. And they
I'll tell
know
you,
all of these people because the town's so small. So they opt
t-
for silence, you know?
here's a terrible story, and I'll try and keep a straight face and not a tear. 3 weeks ago, I got a phone call that my daughter was found dead in her home, right? Might not be able to do this. Let me try anyway, right? And she'd never been sick. She worked for a doctor. She had to have the jab. She got very, very sick after the second jab. I said, to leave the job. There's got to be a better job for you. And she didn't. And she just died in her sleep. So we're waiting for coroner stuff. Anyway, I'm standing out the front with police everywhere and everything, And I speak to the first responders. Happened to be a couple of paramedics that got the first call, went out there. And I said, this is shocking. She's 36, 37-year-old woman, healthy woman. And they said, it's just daily now. We're just accustomed to it. It's happening all the time. And there's just nothing. You can't talk about it. No one cares. Politically, it's probably not a strong place for us to be as a party to talk. I mean, obviously, if I'm questioned on anything, I'll just tell it as it is. But there's just nothing, and I don't even know what it was all about. People say it might have been this and what. That was not a genuine event, and it was not a genuine attempt to fix the event. So you've got to start to think it's something horrific like population reduction. I don't know what it was, right? And I'm with you guys, but it's just not talked about much. And the problem I see is that, you imagine as a political party, if we start pushing that, we're just going to get labelled anti-vax, labelled this, theorist, conspiracy theorists. You can't evidence it properly. It's very hard to evidence. We know you can research yourself, but the media won't touch it. It's probably the saddest moment in global history for humanity. And now I think it's had some effect, because I think, I've got to say, before that happened, before COVID, politically, it was nearly impossible to be heard, nearly impossible to imagine someone getting elected by besides the major parties. And now we've landed in a place where the next 3 or 4 years could be the end of the original two-party system. So maybe there is something that will come from it, but it needs to be damn good for the costs. Whatever comes out of this, it has to be something very special to ever cover the cost of some of the losses that we've endured as people. And,
not a statistic. These are real people, and this is the thing we've been, Michael, and I've been hearing these, and it continues. It hasn't gone away. And I sometimes think government tends to think of, and the profession tends to think of these as statistics. This was a risk calculation or whatever, but where we sit, we just see so much suffering, and we want it to end. And without someone being, without everything being taken into account, without there being consequences, we're still on the same trajectory of 1984.
Can I ask? Sorry. First off, I want to say I'm so sorry, man. If I lost my daughter, I don't know how it comes. I'm so sorry for that. I'm absolutely so sorry. I think everybody is. But can you do us a favor? Can you tell us her name and tell us something about her, so she's not just a statistic. She's not just someone who died. Tell her a name and tell us something about her that you loved about her, something that made you laugh or something. Just make her real, because these people are real, brother. Well, for that.
It's an interesting story. Look, her name was Aldridge. I adopted her from when she was about 1 year old. I've got quite a few adopted kids around the world. But she was very special for a lot of the early life. Obviously, later in life, she moved on. She looks after, she's a carer for my son, who's disabled from vaccine damage, not this damage. He's got vaccine damage. And she's such a good girl. Worked every day. When her car broke down, she'd walk to work. And there's nothing. And you talk to the coroner, and they go, "Well, we think it was just some of the prescription drugs she took at the same time might have caused the reaction." We know that's not true. People didn't used to die in their sleep.
Well, let's ask Paul. Paul, you've been a doctor for 30 years. Did people just die in their sleep?
Young people, young people. It was such a rare event, and now we're seeing it in sports people and that. Do you know, one of the things that bothered me, Mark, is that Arnie Burkhardt, the German pathologist, and others, they have known how to do the appropriate pathology, the appropriate autopsies. They can stain the tissues without the appropriate stains. They they don't see the pattern of the vaccine related component. And the study that was done where they looked at a systematic review of autopsy studies, when they did it thoroughly, and in Australia, there's not a single pathologist who you can send this to. This is it's still like you say, you can't say, but in the systematic review that was published, it was 74% was either caused or strongly contributed by these interventions that were pushed upon the public. And to me, this ongoing cover-up, the fact that the profession is not, and I watch parent after parent trying to get the appropriate tests and it's being withheld, and so the crime is ongoing from my point of view. The cover-up is still ongoing. Now, it may not be associated, but my point is we could find out, and on the best evidence, it's about 73% associated, and especially when you've got someone who is young and well, and you've got even these triathletes that are dying in their sleep. Come on, guys. When are we going to wake up and start dealing with the evidence?
I think people did. I mean, I was heavily involved. Dr. Chris was one of my candidates. Dr. Chris from AMPS. I went along to a lot of his conferences and met, scientists from all doctors and experts from all over the world. I was very well versed on all of this. Obviously, Adelaide's a different sort of town, so everyone knew me in Adelaide, but nationally, I didn't really get a lot of review on that. But I know what's happened. We all know what's happened, and I'm just I sit back and think, too often you wouldn't believe how often I think just turn away and don't do anything anymore and just retire and have a life. But I just see this. COVID was, basically murder of a whole lot of people, however you look at it, right? And they stood there and they stood there and they stood there and said safe and effective, and they had no idea whether it was or not, and they should all be in jail. But that's a different thing. And I want all of the pain and suffering that we're going through, and that pain and suffering is housing, it's people that can't afford this. Homelessness is rising at about 10,000 every 2 weeks. I mean, this country's just screwed, mate. And if we don't stand united now, we're in real trouble. We really are. Our kids and their grandkids deserve a shitload more than just a whinge fest. And then you get on and you start talking to these other parties, and it's all like a game for whoever gets the most power. Fuck them. Excuse my language, I don't give a shit about power. I just want people to give a shit about the kids, and I got homeless people at my market, and they come to our market. I give them a few bucks here and there where I can. I feed them if I can. There's just more and more and more of them. Everything is just destructive. And as you said earlier, we are the richest country in the world and there's just no money, mate. There's just no money. It's not fair. The migration levels are ridiculously high, all for certain countries. Why? We can't ask questions anymore. They don't want us to talk anymore. If we have to talk more than we ever had, we have to discuss all these things more than we ever had. We have to stand taller than we ever had, and we have to suck it up when we're trying to deal with other people that have similar interests to us. And I'm not seeing it happening as much as I'd like to, but anyway, that's why I exist at the moment. I've had a pretty good life, really. I'm at that age where you shouldn't do anything anymore. You should just sit back and have a good time. I've got lots and lots of nice cars and shit. I don't know if you heard about that, but the government arrested me a few times in my career, and I took them to court, and they paid damages. So I have a freehold house and a hell of a lot of really nice cars. But I don't have a lot of income. But I could comfortably nearly retire. But wow, man, we've got to get the problem with this game, and I call it a game, is if we don't get into politics on the inside where the media have to listen, because they do have to listen to you when you're in politics. If we can't get the right people in there to change all of this and try and get some justice for all these people, these kids and families, we get nowhere. And so I've taken the first time in my life, I've taken this approach of don't say this just in case. Let's find what everybody's interested in and just run a conservative sort of platform to try and get the votes to get in. So when we get in there, but I don't want to hide who we are either. Does it make sense? Like it's a real balancing act because we
Can I
want
ask?
to.
Can I ask you, Mark? How are the politicians going to fix this? This
Yeah.
is the Australian dollar in milligrams of gold, and you can see in 2000 it was about 80 milligrams, and now the other day we dropped below 4 milligrams. So it's and it's not, if you're thinking, oh, this is just Australia, where especially this is like the US dollar, the euro, the Swiss franc. Can you see a trend here? I see a trend. All the
I would,
currencies are heading to zero. And that'll give you a bit of unaffordability and homelessness. You know?
I wondered
I
if
was,
that's why they released the Epstein files, to get everyone reading
I
the
was
Epstein files,
reading.
because they
We
don't
better not go
realize
down
that
that.
the
We
world
better not go
economy is
down that
about to
rabbit,
collapse.
Warren. I
Oh well,
opened it today.
that's worth a war. That's worth a war. Someone should bomb someone quickly, so that we don't have to think
I,
about that.
I'll say this only. I opened them today because someone sent me something, and I went, really? And I didn't believe him. So I opened it. I punched in Australia. I punched in South Australia. It came up with an area where I've been involved in major investigations against trial crime, right? So I went, oh, why has that come up? And I punched on it, and I nearly fell off my chair, and I've been dumbfounded. So I said it to a couple of mates in the media, because I still talk to the media. My mate wrote back to me from a certain station. He went, this can't be real. I said, this is real. But you know what's going to happen from it? Not a lot.
Yeah.
But anyway, I went off topic there, but that was
No,
shocking.
it's true. This is the thing. This is what's coming out. I mean, here, but I do wonder if that's been let out because the world will be talking about it, and the world won't start talking about the imminent financial collapse that we seem to be having. I think silver lost $1 trillion in 90 minutes or something the other day, Paul.
30
Yeah,
minutes.
these markets, the CME, is meant to have circuit breakers. So that at 10% in a day, it's meant to stop. But on this particular day, it went straight down to 18%, which for something like silver is just an enormous thing. And apparently, at Justerio posted on X, JP Morgan seemed to get out at just the bottom, ka-ching, 12 million ounces into their coffers. So, but I'm not worried about the long-term trajectory. It's the inverse of what's happening with the dollars, the currencies in gold. It's heading down. Silver and everything else is ultimately, as things is going to do very well, but there's going to be a lot of volatility. But people shouldn't be, if you're trying to trade what's happening with the commodity bull market, you could lose your money several times over on the way to being completely right. Just save hard assets is the way you protect yourself from a currency collapse. And Michael, I've been talking about silver and commodities for ages, and it's so surreal to me to see it. It's practically a vertical line if you look on the weekly chart going straight up. So that tells me, among other things, that the shit is real. That things are creaking and popping in the financial system. And if we don't, does that mean anything? If we don't have freedom, if we don't have human rights, if we don't have free speech and free thought, if we can be jailed arbitrarily because of some interpretation of some politician or tribunal, then. But my point is, the wheels are something is happening in real time now, and the hard assets. It's not just silver, platinum, palladium, oil is starting to show a thing, and of course gold. So it's the dying of the currency, and a lot of suffering is happening to that. And I don't hear any politician talking about what is the flaw. What is the
You
flaw in
wouldn't
our?
have you wouldn't they wouldn't understand it. Probably Rennick would be pretty good with that. He's pretty good with the, economics. I found a couple of things interesting this year. I went to a meeting on water because we've got an algae bloom here, so I went over to Bali and meet the water experts. And I sat in a pub with the what do you call them? Oh, there was a guy. There's about four or five of them. What do you call them? The people that are the boss, the representatives of their countries and other countries. What it's called? I don't know. Mind blank.
I like
Ambassadors.
ambassador.
Ambassadors.
Ambassadors. I sat with a whole lot of ambassadors in different countries, and we had a bloke from Indonesia there who was the ambassador to Chile or somewhere, and had just come back. And I thought this was really interesting when you talk about global governance. This whole concept of one world government and everything else. And I thought it was really interesting because over in South Australia, they tried to bring out a law here that if you've got land and you haven't utilised it within a certain amount of time, they could seize that as an asset and you didn't have to pay you retribution. And of course, it didn't go anywhere because everyone screamed and yelled. But they were trying to do that in Bali as well. So what happens in Bali, if you don't know it, the local blokes, the villagers, when they come into the city to get work, and then when they go back to the village, they build a house to retire in. They don't build the house earlier because the houses fall apart after about 3 years. The earth reclaims them just about. And so they actually tried to recoup and take all of that. And at the same time, they tried to go digital only, no cash. So you know what the Indonesians did? They went out and they cashed in every cent they owned from the banks, the whole lot. And then the banks didn't have enough money, so they started burning the fucking banks. And I thought to myself, isn't it coincidental, right? I loved how they reacted to it, but isn't it coincidental that the stuff that was happening there, and you're speaking with these people from Switzerland and everywhere else, and the same laws try, they say, every time they try something now to get hold of our money or our assets or our wealth, or devalue our wealth, as may be the case, it's every country at the same time exactly.
Yeah.
Same
Yeah.
as the COVID thing. It's every
Yeah.
country. And so you've got to start to say clearly there's a group or a body or a something somewhere that pushes all of this stuff. And then so when we used to say one world government, everyone used to go, oh, your conspiracy theories, but there has to be something like that out there. I mean, I could point to what I believe it is, but I'm just saying it's a proven point now. When you travel the world, and I'm just so political, I can't help myself. You can sit for a beer on the beach in Indonesia and it ends up at politics. I'm sure it's my fault. It might not be, but it's the same problem in every country at exactly the same time so
Yeah.
often that you've got to start to say, hang on. And it's like they started to talk about some other virus that kills 40 to 70% of the people. And I think there's 2 cases somewhere in India. And they're going nuts about it. And you just all you can think is, oh, they're not going to do it again, are they? They're going to do this again. I wonder how they would genuinely go trying to run the whole forced jab thing after they've done it and it worked out such a failure. I don't think they really would have as much.
I can promise you that if there was safe treatments, that would be withheld from the population again.
Yeah.
I asked Grok about Nipah, and I said, oh, that's a single-stranded RNA virus. Yes, that's a single-stranded RNA. Does that use the same RNA-dependent RNA polymerase that other RNA viruses use? Because we knew how to treat COVID and we know how to treat flu now. For this, this is restricted information. That's what
Oh,
Grok
you
said.
actually got that on.
Grok said, "Yeah, I can show you the post." It's like it's that's restricted information. So it's going to be the same. It's going to be the same thing. One of the biggest crimes of the COVID era was that we knew how to treat it. No one needed to end up dying or in the ICU in the first place, but they wanted the climate of fear to push their product. And I'm very suspicious of that'll be the first thing suppressed.
I'll tell you something. I want to show some good news though before we go. This came from America now. U.S. Can we just detransitioner wins medical malpractice lawsuits, receives $2 million. Her psychologist and the surgeon both found liable. manipulated her. She had a mastectomy at age 16. So, and they're saying now, Elon shared it, said there's basically lawsuit after lawsuit coming. So I hope it happens here, because I think one of the things no one talk about over the last few years is the horrific sight of beautiful young women with that showing off that great scar, that great vicious scar against their chest where their beautiful breasts have been removed. I think
Oh,
it's like a Mengele
yeah.
era, and there's been a madness taking over the world, and I think that was the epitome of it. So that, to me, is just fantastic news, which shows that maybe in the American justice system there might still be some justice. Because I'm afraid I don't have. I have very little hope in our politicians. We'll see what the Senate does with the hate speech laws, and I have very little faith in our medical system. You know, I even though they say my heart, they did this when they got things like that, but this thing of pushing through the transitioning in schools now, I know in Victoria, as you know, as early as 6, they're doing it now, and the teachers don't have to tell the adults. I mean, it's evil. It's not. It's not. It's just evil, and yet there's so many people going with it. I just struggle to understand. Anyway, look, we should sell hope as we go. Because I tell you, Mark, what that girl said to me, you can't sell hopelessness no matter how tight its grip. Your moral obligation to do it. So that's something hopeful to go out with. I'm also going out with, I interviewed Colin Lilly today. It was a great interview with John, and he's got a great song coming out, and I'm going to play it now. It's called This Land. And I think and he is the believer of me that art is one way to renovate our identity as Australians. Because once we get our identity back, that is like a fort to fight from. At the moment, we don't know who we are, and everything's fallen down. So we can get back to fundamentally who we are, then we can start defending that. And we are a good people. We are a common sense, fair, empathetic people. We are a people worth fighting for. But unfortunately, the wolves in our politicians' suits got inside our chicken coop and they fucked everything up. And
Can I, can I,
because I'm telling you, as
can I,
far as I'm concerned, these last 6 years, this probably get me arrested. Our country has been medically raped, and now we are being pillaged by the corporations from around the world. And unless we wake up and see that and start defending what is ours for the sake, not just for ourselves, but for our kids and our grandkids, then it's going to be very, very, very dark times. But on the flip side, if we did come together, and you can hear it rising all over Australia, it could define us as a nation forevermore. They tried to bring in 1984, and we said, fuck off.
yeah. I want to finish on something saying about that.
You
I
finish,
do
Boris.
fire response and rescue, and I'll be really brief. I went up in the fire zone the first time just by coincidence. A friend's house was on fire, and I disabled the animals. You know, it was a horrible event. And I called out for people, and I said, "We need cars here. We need to get up there because the government won't act for months." You know, I ran 40 or 50 vehicles a day into that fire zone. If I'd called out in the evening that I needed a caravan or I needed a genset or I needed this or I needed a car for someone that lost their car, do you know by the afternoon I had all of that stuff for free from the Australian people. And we took them up and gave it to them. The Australian people are outstanding when it comes to helping them, mate. But this
Yeah,
stuff that's been happening to us is being individualised,
yeah.
and it's you can't all help, and and the reason they get away with it is, if you're struggling to feed your family, and they say if you don't have this jab, you lose your job. A lot of us lost our jobs, right? I didn't have to; I was self-employed, but for some people, they just didn't have the capacity to say no because they wanted to pay their bills, and so we.
Actually, to finish, Mark, tell the story of
Sorry,
your market.
I rave on. Sorry, mate.
Yeah, you can finish the story of the market that you kept open during COVID. Let's go on that because
Oh,
that was spice
okay.
and hope. Let's go out with
All
that.
right. So it started as an attack on Woolies and Coles, and I started operating markets, and I ended up with 4 markets, and I was getting bigger and bigger, and I was taking the court, blah 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 blah, and they were trying to shut the markets on the development law, and I'll keep it short, mate, because I've been talking a while. Anyway, what I did, I didn't want to lose my main market. One of my markets was located on Commonwealth land, so it was constitutional, so they couldn't touch me, and my other wasn't. So I registered it as a shopping centre. I applied under development law as if it was bricks and mortar. And so when COVID came out, they used to give police directions every Friday night as to what you could and couldn't do. If you remember that, I don't know if that was every state. And they put out a police direction one Friday afternoon at about 9 o'clock, saying that no markets could operate in South Australia. And so I just rang everyone and said we're operating as usual. And so we had this market going, and we had probably about 4,000 or 5,000 people at the market. And the police come in on the main road and blocked all the main entrances to us to close us down. And it was horrific. It was so funny because my customers were parking on the other side in a car park and coming under an underpass. So it didn't stop any customers. My customers are great. Didn't stop any of them coming in. And the police come in and they said, we changed all the rules last night. I said, yeah, I read them. Here they are. And they said, you've got to shut down. I said, no, I don't, mate. And they said, you're a market? No, I'm a shopping centre. And I had the paperwork ready for them. And I said, I'm a shopping centre, mate. Sorry. Are you shutting Woolies and Coles? And they said, no. I said, well, you can fuck off then. Right. And then Channel 7 are passing. It gets better. Channel 7 are passing, and they knew me. So they've come in and they jumped out the car with the camera, what's going on here with all these police. And he said, what have you just told the police? I told them to fuck off. And it's like in the news report, Mark Aldridge tells the police to fuck off. And I said, if you don't, why don't you go and get someone that understands the law to advise you on what the law is here? Because obviously you don't understand it. I'm happy to give you the advice, legal advice if you like, but otherwise leave. And they had to leave, right? And it was just a day. And all the people shopping, they see the cops all leaving, and they're just all clapping, and it's like, we won something. Because you know what we did? No social distancing, no masks. I just refused, and they couldn't find a way to get me, and they tried to shut me that way. And I've got to say, that was a really brilliant moment. I'm knocking everything on the table. That was a brilliant moment for everybody. And we ran, for some people that are still scared of COVID, we had what we could collect and go boxes. We did that. We adapted completely. You could pull in to the car park, say you want some fruit and veg, and we dropped 2 boxes in your boot, right, or in your back seat, and you pay us, it was $20 a box, $40, and you went home and you had all your food for a week. And it was just the most magnificent thing that we did. And they shut every other market down. Isn't it funny? They shut everybody down except for the big end of town, Woolies and Coles. You couldn't even open a small shop. So the big shopping centres, you could go into Woolies, but you couldn't even go into any of the small shops there at all. Mate, that was the most ridiculous times of our lives. And I'm surprised we all survived. But I thank you guys, because you guys added a bit of common sense to it all. I sort of sat back dumbfounded by it all, to be honest. And you know what's dumbfounded the most by? I'll finish on this. They took it to the Supreme Court. Was it New South? They took it to the Supreme Court, right? And I'm watching the whole case. So I'm watching it every day. Full bench of Supreme Court. And the finding at the end, the judge, the Chief Justice says, I've given no weight to your constitutional arguments. And I've gone, yippee! If he gives no weight to the constitutional arguments, that is straight in the door of the High Court, straight in for adjudication and no one did it. And I went, what's going on in this country? Who's running that case? Do you remember the case? I can't remember which state it was. And I thought, you've just been given an opening into the High Court under Section 51, 23AA or whatever it was, and no one took it. And then I started going, who are we led by in this country that they could let that happen to us? And all of us saw it. You had to see it, unless you were blind and you deliberately had some weird ulterior motive. That you didn't see what was going on. But anyway.
Well,
yes,
I love the story, Mark. It gives me hope. There he is. it gives me hope.
He's just brushed his hair. Look, he looks more neater now. I'm sure that's what it is. He's trying to look. Yeah, he's just trying to look more sexy than us. Look, it's just.
I'm only set.
Anyway, thanks for you guys.
I'm like a pin-up boy in dementia nursing home ward.
And I just want to thank you both. Like Michael, I watched him all the time, I never
Thanks,
contacted
brother.
him to have me on because I thought I'm too political.
No, Marin.
And yet,
No.
thanks, Doctor. Everybody pulled their weight, and a lot of people pulled their weight. And that whole trip to over to Canberra was just outstanding. I mean, that was really outstanding. That was just outstanding. And everyone that kept talking about it, I said, "Well, I was just with all these anti-vaxxers, about 1 million of them, and I haven't been vaxxed. None of us wore masks, and I'm okay still." And you get all the, you know, remember the ads? If you're not vaccinated, the vaccination will track you down. I don't.
Yeah, yeah. No.
Look,
The
GPS
virus
tracking.
will track you
Remember the
down.
ads? I just.
The virus will track you down.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
yeah, that's right.
So
Hilarious
long
shit.
as we don't
I remember.
comply, so long as we don't comply with tyranny, and we have a bit of larrikinism and common sense and nous, we've got hope to get through this, and the love and compassion, the care for one another, like you were saying, how people muck together when times are tough. That's what we need, and I suspect times will get tough before we fix up this mess. But that's the hope for me, Michael and Mark.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. We just keep going. It's just about common sense now. We're surrounded by nonsense, which is all lies, and we know what
Well,
common sense is. So we just call it out.
it'll be interesting
All
if
right.
I get elected. It's going to be hilarious. Just telling you, it's going to be hilarious over here because, like, I'm like the longest term loser ever in the world. Like that show, The Biggest Loser. I should have
Yeah.
won that because, like, I'm still there 25 years later, and I watched all these people come and go. They come in, get kicked around, and run away, and I'm still there. So if I actually got elected, it would be hilarious because I don't think, particularly the Labor Party in South Australia, all the Greens would be very impressed if they had to say hello to me in the house every day. That's for sure. Um, so yeah, who knows, mate? Maybe I'll do it. Maybe I won't. But I'll give it a damn good shot. But I just hope everybody out there that gets involved in any party or anyone that's voting, that just really, it's not that hard with Google and everything else and all the search engines to look into who's running, do a bit of a fact check on them, fill the forms in yourself. There's like in the lower house, there's like 6 boxes. You go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's really easy. Above the line, it's not hard. Let's start taking elections a bit more seriously. I know
Yeah.
they're rigged. I could talk about that. I could come on and do a whole show about all the stuff in the courts because I've been in
Yeah,
there
we've done
all
we've
through
done
the
that.
terms.
Maybe we should. When the elections
And
in March, right? So we got
yeah,
February to
I can
talk.
tell
So
you
we'll,
every
we'll
dodge there
chat
is.
that. Yeah.
I went to court and proved 136,000 votes went missing in South Australia. But the law is, I'll just finish, the law is that if they've called the election, there's no way to undo it, even if you find excessive fraud.
That's so
Anyway,
yeah.
but even though it's all rigged, if we actually try a little bit harder, you get a few more voices in, those few voices encourage other voices, and we can. I'd like to sort of die when I can see that we've done something towards empowering the people instead of these morons that are in charge now and these corporate scumbags and particularly the big pharma. I'd like to see them all get kicked in the ass before I go, and they deservedly so. So that's what I like to see. But we can get there. You guys just got to keep spreading your message, and you do it so well, Michael, with compassion and
Thanks,
empathy,
brother.
and it drives me, man. It drives me. Compassion and empathy drives me. I'm a nutter.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
I hate
that's
rats
I'm
in my
going to do a
sanctuary.
live later tonight or tomorrow morning in the Gold Coast or Toowoomba area who'd had she was a cardiac nurse, had a serious vaccine injury. Well, she's in worse shape now. She's giving me a call. So I'll be doing something with that because she really needs help, like lots of people do. So we'll put it out and see. So the war
If you've ever got
continues.
anyone in Adelaide needs a hand, man, you ring me. If they need food, they need anything, you ring me. I'll fucking drop it off. No problem, man. All right. I'll
No
cover it
worries.
myself with
Thanks,
my
Mark.
mate. No
Thanks,
problem.
brother. It's so great to have you in the cafe. We'll get you in the game. Really special.
Yeah, I've
So really,
enjoyed it.
thanks for a
I
great
the
night.
coffee. I replaced the coffee with a glass of red wine,
That's
and
cool. That's cool.
I
That's
figured
cool.
it's a cafe.
Yeah.
You can still sell wine. Nice
Perfect.
to see you, Dr. Paul, too.
Same here, Mark. Nice speaking.
Someone's finished. All right, I'm going to go out and listen to this. This is Colin Lilly's song, This Land. They spent 2 years getting this song together. We had him on today. Incredible interview. I'll probably
Is this
repost it tomorrow. But
Jacinda's husband?
definitely, yeah, we had him on
Is this
this morning
Jacinda's
and
husband?
interview. Yeah, great
Oh,
song.
he's
He's a great singer.
fantastic.
Yeah,
I
oh,
had
it
a
was a
night
great
with
interview.
drinks. I had drinks with him one night with a whole lot of politicians, and the whole night the two of us took the piss out of the politicians. The more drunk we got, he's a hell of a
Yeah,
good man. Hell of a good
yeah,
man.
he
Like
is.
his
Yeah, yeah,
missus,
yeah.
his missus is killer. Jacinda's like
Yeah,
we've
she's a
been.
hope. There is hope out
She
there. Anyway,
is.
I've got to go. I've
She's.
got to get onto this nursing, Mark. So sorry to cut
Oh,
you
sorry,
short.
mate. I'll shut up now.
I've got to
See
do
you,
this.
mate.
So this is Colin Lilly. This is This Land. We will get you back on, brother. Keep having fun with that wine. Paul, great to see us, and we'll see how we go next week on Sunday. Take care, everybody. Colin Lilly,
See you
listen
guys.
to this song. It's going to be a huge hit.
I braved the seven seas, lost in time, seeking out freedom far and wide, with a heart burdened by the night. The spirit yearned to be a bird in flight. I found myself beneath the southern sky. It taught me the song of goodbye, but I never could run from my mind. So I traveled deeper to find I belong to this land. I belong to this land. Across this red hot dusty land, so far and so foreign from my mother's hands, and the people, they spoke in different tongues, and I knew this is where I belong. We belong to this land. We belong to this land. Belong to this land. We belong to this land. This place we all call home sees me as one of its own, and no matter where I travel or how far, the dreaming brings the soul back to its heart. We belong to this land. 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 We belong to this. We belong to this land. We belong to this. We belong to this land. My blood.
That's the link there to this song. So go check it out. Make it, share it, share it, share it.
We